Right, from one war to the other, Russia's war shadows are now stretching beyond Ukraine. A drone hit an apartment building in NATO member Romania. It is drawing condemnation from both NATO as well as the European Union. While Romania and its NATO allies call it a grave escalation, Russia has distanced itself from claiming responsibility. Moscow has warned Europe against more drone incursions in the near future. Our next report gets you all about it.
Russia's war games are not just a nightmare for Ukraine anymore. They are now knocking at Europe's doorstep. Romania claims an explosive-laden Russian drone. Part of a swarm of 43 Russian drones hit an apartment building in Galați overnight, sparking a massive fire. But Moscow has distanced itself from these claims. The incident unfolded as Russia launched a fresh wave of drone strikes targeting Ukrainian port infrastructure along the Danube River. Galați sits on the border of Ukraine in Romania's far southeast. Just across the border lies Izmail, home to the largest Ukrainian port on the river Danube, and a frequent target of Russian attacks. Romania's defense minister identified the drone as a Geran-2, the Russian version of the Iranian-designed Shahed 136 drone. Though drone incursions have been common since the Ukraine war, Romania claims it's the first time that a residential building has been hit in the country. For many local residents, the horror of waking up to a drone strike was far too real.
Do we still have safety? Not anymore, right? It was intercepted around 010 or so, before it fell in the city, in the very center of Galați. And what did the army do? What did the defense do? We are definitely not safe in Galați anymore.
Though Romania scrambled 2 F-16 fighter jets when the Russian drone was initially detected by radar, the Defense Ministry admits it faced challenges in neutralizing the drone.
All available data has already been analyzed to establish the exact sequence of events, and it resulted in the fact that there were no real opportunities to engage it safely. We are not facing an attack on Romania. We are facing the effects of a conflict taking place right next to our border.
Now, Romania has requested its NATO allies to accelerate the transfer of anti-drone capabilities to the country.
In the discussion I had with the NATO Secretary General, I insisted on expediting the process of getting more air defense equipment, and he fully agreed that this equipment should reach Romania as quickly as possible.
Both NATO and the European Union have criticized Russia over the drone strike. While NATO has called out Russia, the US asserts it will defend every inch of NATO. EU chief Ursula von der Leyen says Russia has crossed yet another line. The bloc has vowed to increase deterrence on the EU's eastern border.
The Chancellor stated that the drone incident in Romania demonstrates Russia's determination to further escalate this war. Germany firmly stands by its NATO allies, including Romania. We are, of course, ready to defend every inch of the alliance's territory.
The strike comes at a time when Europe is already on edge. Russia has deployed the nuclear-capable hypersonic missile, the Oreshnik, to Belarus, closer to Europe. And Ukraine is responding with long-range strikes deep inside Russian territory. Bureau Report, WION, World is One.
In In other news, France has buried one of the darkest and final remaining symbols of its slavery era. Nearly 2 centuries after abolishing slavery, the French Parliament has repealed the Black Code that once treated enslaved people as property and allowed them to be beaten, sold, raped, or even killed. Our next report brings you more.
Permettez-moi de remercier ma maman.
The French National Assembly unanimously voted to repeal the Code Noir or Black Code. The vote passed by 254-0, putting an end to a law introduced in 1685 under King Louis XIV to regulate slavery in France's overseas colonies. The law classified enslaved people as movable property and granted legal protection to slave owners. Its 60 articles governed labor, punishment, marriage and religion, while several clauses permitted brutal punishment, mutilation and the forced sale of enslaved people. French President Emmanuel Macron said the law should never have remained after slavery was abolished in 1848, and described France's silence over the issue for nearly 2 centuries as a form of offense. Macron further stated that France should not reject discussions around reparations for slavery, while cautioning against making what he called false promises. France was the world's 3rd largest slave trading nation after Britain and Portugal. Historians estimate that France transported nearly 1.4 million Africans to plantation colonies. The debate in the French Parliament turned emotional, especially for lawmakers from overseas territories whose ancestors suffered under slavery.
Today's vote is another step forward, a tribute to the men and women, to the children enslaved, to those men and women who were enslaved, and from whom I come.
Bureau Report, WION. World is one.
For months now, the United States has been quietly building up military power over Cuba. Warships, surveillance aircraft, fighter jets, and thousands of troops positioned across the Caribbean. At the center of that buildup is the USS Nimitz aircraft carrier strike group, which is loaded with guided missile destroyers, reconnaissance planes, and advanced military assets stationed in Florida, Puerto Rico, and other parts of the region. This kind of deployment is the largest U.S. force buildup outside the West Asian region. Officially, the White House says there are no immediate plans to invade Cuba. But as per reports, U.S. military planners have already gamed out multiple scenarios for possible action if conditions on the island deteriorate further. The buildup, remember, follows months of escalating tensions between Washington and Havana.
We hope that dialogue will prevail at this time, when the aggressive actions taken by the US government against Cuba cast doubt on the seriousness and responsibility with which it is approaching this process. We believe that the international community cannot stand idly by while an entire people is deprived of its means of livelihood, while an entire population continues to be punished for reasons of domination, and while a country is threatened militarily without any justification.
Under President Donald Trump, American forces have increased military operations across the Caribbean. This includes deadly strikes on alleged drug trafficking boats moving between South America and the islands. The U.S. pressure campaign against Cuba entered a new phase after the U.S. Justice Department issued an indictment against former Cuban President Raul Castro over the 1996 shoot-down of 2 planes. This escalation comes just days after CIA Director John Ratcliffe met with Cuban officials in Havana. Cuba says it was an attempt to improve dialogue with U.S. Cuban officials reportedly told the American side that Havana does not represent a threat to U.S. national security. At the same time, conditions inside Cuba are rapidly worsening. Severe fuel shortages triggered by sanctions and import restrictions have pushed the country deeper into crisis. Hospitals are struggling to function. Schools have been forced to shut down. Government offices are now operating at reduced capacity. According to the Energy Minister, Vicente de la Olevi, Cuba has now completely run out of imported diesel and fuel oil. The country's power grid is in a critical state, with rolling blackouts lasting up to 22 hours in Havana and sparking growing public protests across the island. Meanwhile, the U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio has recently described Cuba as a national security threat because of its ties with Russia and China. Relations between both these countries after the Cuban Revolution in 1959, remember, followed by the invasion of Bay of Pigs in 1961, a U.S.-backed failed invasion attempt to overthrow Castro regime.